Today, Four-Legged Loyalty brings you a story set in the Appalachian Mountains of West Virginia, USA, a place where oak and pine forests stretch endlessly, moonlight shines through the dense canopy, and secrets lurk in the darkness waiting to be discovered. This is Howl in the Moonlight, the journey of a German shepherd, a story of simple friendship, steadfast loyalty, and a strange mystery as it unfolds through the journey of Border Patrol agent Ryan Ree Carter and his dog Luna. Ryan Ree Carter is a 32-year-old Border Patrol agent who works at a checkpoint near the West Virginia-Kentucky border, about 60 miles west of Charleston. He wasn't the most striking of the group, 6 feet tall, built but not overly muscular, with light brown hair cropped short in a military style and steely green eyes that held a hidden secret that he never shared. His face was tanned from days spent out on patrol, with faint lines at the corners of his eyes, a reminder of hikes on rugged Appalachian trails and nights spent sleeping outdoors in oak forests. Ree came from a small town called Logan, near Charleston, where moonlit nights were often accompanied by the sound of wind whistling through the hills, the sound of small streams cutting through the valleys, and the hoots of owls in the woods that defined his childhood. His family lived in a small log house with a red-tiled roof, wood walls covered in faded gray paint, and an old fireplace that his mother, Ellen Carter, used to light on cold winter nights. Ree was the only boy in a family of 2. He grew up in the oak forest near Logan, jogging down dirt roads in his old sneakers and his father's blue jacket, letting the winter chill and autumn drizzle seep into his skin. He was not a social person, preferring the quiet of nature to the noisy chatter of the town. When he was 18, he graduated from Logan High and found himself at a crossroads in his life. His older sister Jessica had moved to Charleston to become a nurse, and his younger sister, Mia, had stayed in Logan to learn to be a seamstress. But Ree didn't want to stay. The town felt too small, too familiar, and he yearned for a greater purpose. His father, Jim Carter, a former coal miner, often told stories of his days in the dark, of the patience and perseverance the job taught him, and those stories planted a seed in Ree's mind. He wanted to test himself in a harsher environment. One winter afternoon, while jogging through the woods near Logan, Ree saw a Border Patrol recruitment poster hanging in a grocery store. Join the Border Patrol. Protect the border, protect the country. The words clicked in his mind, and a few weeks later, he packed his father's old backpack, a blue one with frayed straps, a few changes of clothing, and his father's small folding knife, and headed to the recruiting center in Charleston. When he arrived at the training base near the West Virginia-Kentucky border in 2015, retrained to be a Border Patrol agent specializing in patrolling and detecting illegal activity, a role that required focus and patience, qualities he had learned from his days jogging through the oak woods in Logan. The base was a vast area, with red dirt training grounds, oak and pine forests, and days of scorching sun interspersed with occasional rainstorms. Ree wore a dark green border uniform, a baseball cap, and carried a Glock 19, but he wasn't the best soldier on the team. He didn't have the speed of his younger comrades, nor the shooting skills that would have propelled him to the top. But Ree had one thing no one could deny: perseverance. He could hike for hours on rugged trails without complaining, and sit still on cold nights observing without losing focus. He carried his father's folding knife in his pocket, not for protection, but as a reminder of Logan, of the days he thought he would never leave. Luna came into Ree's life one August morning in 2023, 8 years into his career at the border. Luna was a German shepherd transferred from a training center in Quantico, Virginia, where dogs are carefully selected for law enforcement duty. Luna was not the largest of her litter, weighing in at about 80 pounds and standing nearly 26 inches at the shoulder, but she stood out for her alertness and her ability to sniff out drugs and human tracks. Luna's coat was a glossy black with silvery gray on her legs and chest, groomed to withstand the cold of the Appalachian Mountains and the drizzle of the trails. Her ears were always upright, alert to every sound, from the wind whistling through the oak trees to the sound of footsteps in the distance. Her bright brown eyes held an uncanny sharpness, as if they could see through the darkness to see things that humans couldn't. Luna was trained to patrol and detect illegal activity, a vital task on the West Virginia-Kentucky border, where smugglers often took advantage of the rugged terrain to transport contraband. The first time Ree met Luna, he was standing in the Border Patrol's training yard, in the weak light of a summer morning. The training yard was a large area, surrounded by wire fencing and oak trees, with the ground covered in dry grass and the red dirt typical of West Virginia. Luna was led from her cage by a handler named Emily, a woman in her 30s with neatly tied black hair and hands strong from years of working with dogs. Emily put on a dark blue Border Patrol shirt, put a black nylon collar on Luna, and told Ree that Luna was a special dog with the ability to detect drugs at a greater distance than any dog in her litter. Ree looked at Luna, sensing the alertness in her eyes. He didn't rush. He walked slowly, knelt down in front of Luna, about 3 feet away, and placed his hand on her head. Ree's hand shook slightly, not because he was afraid, but because he felt a strange connection. Luna sniffed his hand, tilted her head, and then sat down suddenly, her eyes looking straight at Ree as if accepting him from that moment. Emily smiled, patted Ree on the shoulder, and told him that Luna had chosen him. From then on, Ree and Luna became inseparable. Every morning, as the dawn broke through the oak trees, Ree took Luna on patrol around the area, checking the trails leading into the border. He would throw an old rubber ball, a ball frayed and covered in red dirt, for Luna to chase, watching her run with powerful strides, her muscles defined by her shiny black fur. Some days, when Ree sat on a wooden bench in the camp, reading an old book like The Old Man and the Sea or jotting down scattered thoughts in a small notebook, Luna would lie down next to him, her head resting on her forepaws, her eyes half closed but alert. Ree didn't say much, but he would whisper short sentences to Luna, "You did well today," or "You're my best friend, you know that?" He didn't know if Luna understood them, but every time he spoke, Luna would lift her head and look at him with bright eyes as if to answer. To Ree, Luna was more than a service dog. She was his companion, a part of the family he had never found since leaving Logan. There were nights when Ree lay in his bunk in the camper, a small room with wooden walls, a folding bed, and an old desk. He thought back to his childhood, to morning runs through the oak forest, the wind whistling through the trees, or sitting by the fire with his father, the smell of wood smoke in the air. He had left home in search of a purpose, but every time he looked down at Luna, curled up on an old blanket next to his bed, breathing steadily, he felt comforted. Luna was more than a dog. She was Ree's motivation to keep going, to believe that life was still worth cherishing. The story Four-Legged Loyalty wants to tell today is not just about Ree and Luna, but also about an unexpected challenge that tested their loyalty and revealed a secret hidden under the moonlight. It takes place on a full moon night in March 2025, when Ree and Luna are sent to the Appalachian Mountains to investigate a report of suspicious activity in the deep woods. The mission seems simple: patrol the border area for signs of illegal border crossers. But a strange howl and a sudden rainstorm lead Ree to disappear, and Luna, with unwavering loyalty, stays behind to find him, leading to a surprising discovery under the moonlight. This is not a fictional story. It is told from Border Patrol reports, from the words of those on the patrol, and from Ree's own scribbles in his notebook after he recovered. This is Howl in the Moonlight, the journey of a German Shepherd dog. Ryan Ree Carter isn't a big talker, and when asked where he's from or why he joined the frontier, he'll usually respond simply, "Logan," to protect the land. But behind that reticence lies a long story about growing up in Logan, a small town near Charleston, West Virginia, where moonlit nights, often accompanied by the wind whistling through the hills, the sound of water running through the valleys, and the hoot of owls in the woods defined his childhood. Logan wasn't a place where people dreamed of great success. It was a place where people lived slowly, toiling in the coal mines or small shops, and rarely leaving to find a different life. Ree came from a working-class family, neither rich nor poor. His father, Jim Carter, was a coal miner with rough hands, blackened by coal dust, and brown hair that had turned gray at the temples from years of hard labor. His mother, Ellen Carter, was a gentle woman who worked at a small grocery store in the center of town, where she stood behind the counter, selling cartons of milk, bread, and household goods to the locals. Ree was the only son of two sisters. He grew up in the oak forest near Logan, jogging down the dirt roads in his father's old sneakers and blue jacket, letting the winter chill and autumn drizzle seep into his skin. He was not a great student at Logan High, but he was always tenacious. He loved to run alone through the oak forests, listening to the wind whistling through the trees, the smell of damp earth and dry leaves filling his nostrils. He didn't attend the social gatherings or weekend football games that the Logan kids loved. He just ran, thought, and searched for some meaning in life that he couldn't quite figure out. His older sister, Jessica, had always been the smartest one in the family, doing well in school and eventually moving to Charleston to become a nurse. His younger sister, Mia, was gentle and smart, choosing to stay in Logan to learn a seamstress trade, living a quiet life among the hills she loved. But Ree was different. He didn't want a life that was too safe, too familiar. When he was 18, Ree was at a crossroads. He had just graduated from high school, but he had no plans to go to college like Jessica or stay in Logan like Mia. His father often talked about his days as a coal miner, about standing in the dark for hours digging coal, about the patience the job taught him as he waited for the wind to stop blowing coal dust in his face. These stories weren't just his father's memories. They instilled in Ree a desire to challenge himself in a harsher environment where he could test his limits. His mother, Ellen, was concerned that he had no clear direction, but she didn't stop him. She quietly prepared a dinner of beef stew and cornbread, his favorite, and placed a clean handkerchief in his backpack before he left. One winter afternoon, while jogging through the woods near Logan, Ree stopped at a grocery store and saw a Border Patrol recruitment poster hanging on the wall. Join the Border Patrol. Guard the border. Protect the country. The words lit a small fire in his mind, awakening a desire for purpose that had been in his heart since childhood. A few weeks later, Ree packed his father's old backpack, a blue one frayed at the straps, containing a few changes of clothes, his father's small folding knife, and a family photo taken by the creek near their house, and headed to the recruiting center in Charleston. He didn't say much as he left Logan. He stood in front of the cabin, took one last look at it, felt the winter chill seep through his jacket, and walked away without looking back. When he arrived at the training base near the West Virginia-Kentucky border in 2015, Ree was training to be a Border Patrol agent specializing in patrolling and detecting illegal activity, a role that required focus and patience, qualities he'd learned from his days jogging through the oak forest of Logan. The base was a vast area, with red dirt training grounds, oak and pine forests, and hot days interspersed with occasional rainstorms. He wore a dark blue border uniform, a baseball cap, and carried a Glock 19 pistol, but he wasn't the most elite soldier on the team. He wasn't as agile as his younger counterparts, nor did he have the shooting skills to quickly advance through the ranks. But Ree had one thing no one could deny: perseverance. He could hike for hours on rugged trails without complaining, and he could sit still on cold nights to observe without losing focus. He carried his father's folding knife in his pocket, not for protection, but as a reminder of Logan, of the days he thought he would never leave. Luna came into Ree's life one morning in August 2023, 8 years into his career on the border. Luna was a German Shepherd transferred from the training center in Quantico, Virginia, where dogs were carefully selected for law enforcement duty. Luna is not the largest dog in her litter, weighing about 80 pounds and standing nearly 26 inches from paw to shoulder, but she stands out for her keen senses and her ability to detect drugs and human traces. Luna's coat is a glossy black with silvery gray on her legs and chest, groomed to withstand the cold of the Appalachian mountains and the drizzle from the trails. Her ears are always upright, alert to every sound, from the wind whistling through the oak trees to the sound of footsteps in the distance. Her bright brown eyes have an uncanny sharpness, as if they can see through the darkness to see things that humans cannot. Luna is trained to patrol and detect illegal activity, a vital task on the West Virginia-Kentucky border, where smugglers often take advantage of the rugged terrain to transport contraband. The first time Ree met Luna, he was standing in the Border Patrol training yard, in the weak light of a summer morning. The training yard was a large area, surrounded by wire fencing and oak trees, with the ground covered in dry grass and the red dirt typical of West Virginia. Luna was led from her cage by a trainer named Emily, a woman in her 30s with neatly tied black hair and hands strong from years of working with police dogs. Emily wore a dark blue Border Patrol shirt, placed a black nylon collar around Luna's neck, and told Ree that Luna was a special dog with the ability to sniff out drugs at a greater distance than any of her litter. Ree looked at Luna, sensing the wariness in her eyes. He didn't rush. He walked slowly, knelt down about 3 feet in front of Luna, and placed his hand on her head. Ree's hands trembled slightly, not because of fear, but because he felt a strange connection. Luna sniffed his hand, tilted her head, then suddenly sat down, her eyes looking straight at Ree as if accepting him from that moment. Emily smiled, patted Ree on the shoulder, and told him that Luna had chosen him. From then on, Ree and Luna became inseparable. Every morning, as the dawn broke through the oak trees, Ree would take Luna on a patrol around the area, checking the trails leading into the border. He would throw an old rubber ball, a ball frayed and covered in red dirt, for Luna to chase, watching her run with strong strides, her muscles clearly visible under her shiny black fur. Some days, when Ree would sit on a wooden bench in the camp, reading an old book or writing something in a notebook, Luna would lie down next to him, her head resting on her front paws, her eyes half closed but alert. Ree didn't say much, but he would whisper short sentences to Luna. "You were great at finding your way today," or "You're my best friend, you know that?" He didn't know if Luna understood what he said, but every time he spoke, Luna would lift her head and look at him with bright eyes, as if she wanted to respond. To Ree, Luna was more than a service dog. She was his companion, the part of the family he had left behind when he left Logan. There were nights when Ree lay in his bunk in the camper, A small room with wooden walls, a folding bed, and an old desk. He thought about his parents, about his childhood, and felt a hollow loneliness. He missed morning runs through the oak woods, the wind whistling through the trees, or sitting by the fire with his father, the smell of wood smoke in the air. But every time he looked down at Luna, curled up on an old blanket next to his bed, breathing steadily, he felt comforted. Luna was more than a dog. She was Ree's motivation to keep going, to believe that life was still worth cherishing. On a full moon night in March 2025, Ryan, Ree, Carter, and Luna were sent to an area near the West Virginia-Kentucky border to investigate a report of suspicious activity in the deep woods of Appalachia. The assignment was not typical for Ree's border patrol. They usually patrolled the familiar trails around the area, looking for signs of illegal border crossers or small drug shipments. But that night, as Ree stood in the base yard, watching the jeeps lined up for departure, he felt a vague unease creeping in. Perhaps it was the chill of the spring night, when the temperature outside was only 6 degrees Celsius, 43 degrees Fahrenheit, and the air carried the scent of damp earth and dry leaves from the surrounding woods under the bright moonlight. Or maybe it was the look in Luna's eyes, his German shepherd who always walked beside him. As she lifted her head to look at him, her ears pricked as if sensing something in the darkness he couldn't see. Ree wore a dark green Border Patrol uniform, a suit designed to blend into the forested landscape, with a thick windproof jacket, moisture-wicking pants, and brown leather boots covered in dry dirt from past patrols. He wore a dark green cap, the brim frayed from sweat and rain, and a pair of small goggles to protect his eyes from branches and the cold wind that blew across the trails. Over his shoulder, he carried a small backpack containing the essentials, a scuffed plastic water bottle, a pack of dry rations, a small first aid kit with bandages and antiseptic, a powerful flashlight, and the notebook he kept with him where he jotted down his scattered thoughts about life in Appalachia. At his side was a Glock 19 pistol, the sling frayed at the edges, but he was not a soldier who relied on weapons. He relied more on patience and observation than bullets. Ree was not a showman. He did not carry the fancy gadgets of some of his comrades, who favored GPS watches and rangefinders, because for him simplicity was a way to keep his mind focused. Luna, as always, walked beside Ree. The 80-pound German shepherd had a glossy black coat with silvery gray on her legs and chest, carefully groomed against the Appalachian cold and the drizzle from the trails. Luna wore a black nylon collar with a small metal tag bearing her Border Patrol number, L7293. Luna's ears were erect, her bright brown eyes were alert, and her steps were strong and sure as she walked across the leaf-strewn grounds of the base. Ree looked at Luna, feeling a strange sense of comfort. He knew that Luna was more than just a working dog. She was his second set of eyes and ears, a creature that could detect things that humans couldn't, especially in a place like Appalachia, where every step could lead to a surprise hidden in the darkness. Before getting into the car, Ree knelt down and stroked Luna's head, feeling the dry but soft fur under his hand, red dirt from past patrols. He didn't think much of it, but he felt that having Luna by his side was enough to face whatever was coming. Ree's patrol consisted of 5 people, all experienced border guards, trained to face the dangers of the deep mountains. The team leader was Sergeant Dave Lawson, a 38-year-old man with short black hair, a sharp face tanned by time spent outdoors, and dark brown eyes that watched everything with a wary eye. Lawson was stern but dedicated, always putting the mission first, and he had a leadership style that inspired confidence, though he was sometimes so focused on the goal that he forgot about the feelings of his teammates. The other members of the team included Private First Class Matt Evans, a tall, dark blonde man of 28 with quiet demeanor and a knack for reading maps, Corporal Lisa Tran, a petite but agile 26-year-old communications specialist, and Private First Class Tom Reed, a 30-year-old man with short red hair who specialized in survival techniques. The team was fully equipped: paper maps, handheld signal detectors, walkie-talkies, flashlights, and some survival items such as drinking water, dry food, and a small tarp to use if they had to stay overnight. The trip began around 9 p.m. as the full moon rose high in the sky, illuminating the oak trees and casting patches of light through the leaves. The team traveled in 2 Border Patrol jeeps, dark green, and with large tires designed to handle the rugged terrain of the Appalachian Mountains. Ree sat in the back seat of the first vehicle, next to Lisa, while Luna curled up at his feet, her head resting on her paws, her ears perked as the road creaked. The road from the base to the mission starting point was a long one, through oak forests with lush green and yellow foliage, past small streams that trickled in the moonlight, and through trails covered in red dirt and dried leaves. Ree looked out the window at the moonlight reflecting off the dew on the oak leaves, and his unease grew even more pronounced. He didn't know why he felt that way, but he tried to push it aside, telling himself that this was just a routine patrol. When the team reached the mission's starting point, a clearing about 6 miles from the base, near a small stream that flowed slowly in the moonlight, they got out of their vehicles and began to prepare. Their mission was to patrol a 7-mile stretch of forest near the West Virginia-Kentucky border, looking for signs of illegal activity reported by a remote lookout, flashing lights and strange noises in the deep woods. Lawson stood in front of the team, map in hand, and explained the plan. We're going to walk through the area, checking every section for signs of a suspicious person. Luna will go ahead to look for anything unusual. Visibility is good tonight with a moonlight, but keep a tight formation and keep in constant radio contact. If there's any sign of danger, retreat to the vehicle immediately. Ree listened, nodding, but he couldn't shake the feeling of worry. He looked down at Luna, who stood still, her ears pricked higher, as if sniffing the cold air. The team set out around 9:30 p.m. Leaves rustled under Ree's boots as they left the clearing, and the chill of the night seeped through his jacket, making him shiver. The temperature was about 5 degrees Celsius, 41 degrees Fahrenheit, and the ground was damp with dew that had begun to condense. Ree kept his usual position near the front of the team, with Luna. He walked at a steady pace, his boots leaving faint footprints in the dry leaves, which were quickly covered by the dew. Luna walked beside him, her nose constantly sniffing the ground, her eyes alert, occasionally lifting her head to sniff the air as if searching for something. The team moved in silence, the only sound being their footsteps and steady breathing in the silence of the deep forest. Ree could feel sweat beginning to seep through his undershirt, even though the air was still cold, and he knew it was a sign of his inner tension. As the team moved deeper into the Appalachian Mountains, the landscape became wilder. The trail led through oak forests with lush greens and yellows, with wild bushes growing in clusters and mossy boulders dotting the road. The tall oaks grew densely, casting patchy shadows on the moonlit ground, and the chill air reduced visibility to just a few meters beyond the moon's light. Ree looked up through the gaps in the canopy, seeing the full moon shining clearly, not a cloud to block it, but the light did not comfort him. He turned to Luna, who paused, her head raised, ears perked higher, her nose sniffing the moist air. He thought to himself that Luna must have sensed something was wrong too, but he wasn't sure what. Around 10 p.m., when the team had gone nearly 2 miles, they entered a narrower section of the trail, flanked by low slopes, about 5 feet high, covered with dry leaves and loose rocks. The path was less than 3 feet wide, and the ground was slippery with wet leaves and tangled roots. Ree felt the chill grow more pronounced, as if the air were trapped between the slopes, and a suffocating feeling began to rise in his stomach. He looked at Luna, who was more focused than ever, her nose sniffing the ground, her ears pricked to the max. He felt a greater unease than ever, but he didn't have time to think about it. Little did he know that in a few minutes, a strange howl would ring out, and his life would change forever. As Ryan Ree Carter's patrol pushed deeper into the narrow trail between the low slopes of the Appalachian Mountains, the chill of the full moon in March was still all around. The temperature hovered around 5 degrees Celsius, 41 degrees Fahrenheit, and moonlight filtered through the oak trees, casting patches of light across the ground covered with dry leaves and moss. The trail, less than 3 feet wide, was slippery with wet leaves and tangled roots, forcing Ree to tread carefully with each step. He wore a dark blue border uniform, a thick windproof jacket that had absorbed a bit of dew from the air, moisture-wicking pants caked with red dirt, and brown leather boots that left faint footprints in the dry leaves. Sweat was beginning to seep through his undershirt, and even though the temperature was still cold, he felt a little stifled under his frayed cap. A small backpack on his shoulder held a flashlight, a map, and a notebook, and his Glock 19 pistol hung from his waist, the strap rubbing against his neck as he moved. But he paid it no mind. The unease in his heart outweighed any discomfort from his gear or the weather. Ree walked near the front of the group, with Luna, his trusty German shepherd. Luna walked with sure steps, her glossy black fur streaked with dry leaves and red dirt from the road, but her erect ears and bright brown eyes still gleamed with constant alertness. Luna's black nylon collar, with its metal tag bearing the number 7293, vibrated as she moved, and her nose sniffed the ground constantly, searching for any sign of danger. Ree looked at Luna, feeling a small comfort amid the cold and the growing tension in his heart. He knew that Luna was more than just a working dog. It was his second set of eyes and ears, a creature that could detect things that humans couldn't, especially in the darkness of Appalachia, where the moonlight barely illuminated the landscape. But even Luna's presence couldn't completely dispel the unease he carried with him since leaving the base, a sense that something was waiting for them ahead, hidden beneath the oak trees in the pale light of the full moon. The patrol had gone nearly 2 miles since leaving the clearing, and the narrow path they were on was a narrow path, flanked by low slopes, about 5 feet high, with a surface of dry leaves, wet red dirt, and loose rocks. The ground beneath Ree's feet was slippery, with small stones rolling under his shoes, and the wet leaves made a treacherous carpet, hiding the bumps beneath. The tight space made Ree feel claustrophobic, as if the slopes were closing in around him, and the cold from the ground seeped through his uniform, making him shiver. He looked up through the gaps in the canopy, seeing the full moon shining brightly, but not enough to dispel the dense darkness between the bushes and tangled roots. He turned to Luna, who paused for a moment, raising her head to sniff the air, her ears pricked higher, as detecting something unusual. Ree felt his heart beat faster, but he didn't have time to think about it. A few seconds later, as the team advanced a few steps into the narrow trail, a strange howl rang out from deep in the woods, a sound unlike that of a wolf or any animal Ree had heard in his years of patrolling the Appalachians. It was low, deep, and drawn out, like a distant whisper through the oaks, carrying a sense of cold and mystery. Ree stopped, feeling a chill run down his spine, the hairs on his arms standing up under his jacket. He turned to look at the team, seeing Lawson and the others had stopped as well, their faces tense in the moonlight. The air grew heavier, and before Ree could even gather his wits, a sudden downpour of rain fell from the sky, icy drops falling through the trees, turning the ground to mud in an instant. The trail was slicker than ever, and Ree felt his boots lose grip on the wet leaves covering the rocks. In that chaotic moment, as the team struggled to hold their formation through the rain, and the eerie howling continued to echo in the distance, Ree slipped on a layer of wet leaves covering the rocks. He fell forward, losing his balance, and in his attempt to cling to the slope beside him, he failed to notice a narrow crevice hidden under the dry leaves and moss. He fell into the crevice, about 3.5 meters, 11.5 feet, deep, a natural pit created by years of rain erosion, now covered with red soil and tangled tree roots. Ree hit his head hard on a sharp rock inside the crevice, heard a dry crack as his head hit the rock, and blood poured from a gash on his left temple. He passed out instantly, his body motionless in the darkness of the crevice, with a small backpack torn off at one corner, and his walkie-talkie shattered on the wet ground. Luna, who was fortunately a few steps ahead of Ree, was not affected by the fall, but the dog barked frantically when it realized that Ree had disappeared into the rain and darkness. Luna's bark echoed through the deep mountains, full of panic and despair, as if calling Ree back. The dog ran to the edge of the ravine, claws scratching at the damp red soil and wet leaves, trying to dig down to find him, but the landslide and tangled roots prevented it. Luna scratched incessantly, leaving scratches on the soil, but it could not penetrate. Luna's bright brown eyes were red from the rain and cold wind, and its shiny black fur was wet from the sudden downpour, but it did not care. In its mind, there was only one goal: to find Ree. The patrol, separated by the sudden downpour and the strange howling, fell into chaos. The rain not only reduced visibility, but also turned the ground into mud, making it impossible for them to accurately determine each other's location. Sergeant David Lawson, the squad leader, was about 6 feet away from Ree when he fell, but the darkness and heavy rain made it impossible to see anything but the faint outlines of his teammates. He shouted into his radio, his voice muffled by the rain and wind. "Carter, where are you? Report now." But there was no response. Ree's radio, which was in his backpack, had shattered when he fell, and the signal was gone. Lawson turned to see the other members of the squad, Matt Evans, Lisa Tran, and Tom Reed, trying to regroup in the rain, their hands clutching their rifles, their eyes alert for any sound around them. Luna continued to bark, her bark echoing in the crevices, but no one on the squad could get close enough to check. The rain was so thick they could see only a few feet ahead, and the slippery ground made every step a risk. Lawson knew it was too dangerous to stay here, not only because of the rain, but also because of the rugged terrain and the possibility of getting stuck in inclement weather. He ordered over the radio, "Retreat to the car immediately. Call for backup on signal." The team began to move back down the trail, keeping a tight formation to avoid getting lost, but Luna refused to follow. Lisa Tran, who was closest to Luna, ran up, grabbed the dog's nylon collar, and tried to pull her away, but Luna growled, yanked on a leash, and ran back to the edge of the ravine, barking incessantly. Lawson looked at Luna, saw the dog's determined gaze, but he had no choice. He ordered the team to retreat without Luna, knowing they needed to survive to call for help. The team left the area, leaving Luna alone in the rain and cold, with the wind whistling through the trees and the distant sound of running water in the deep woods. Ree lay unconscious in the narrow crevice, his body shaking from the trauma, blood from the gash on his temple running down his cheek, drying in red streaks on his tanned skin. He didn't know that the team had retreated, didn't know that the rain was still falling and the moon was hidden by clouds, and didn't know that Luna was at the edge of the crevice, determined not to leave. In the darkness of the crevice, a small gap between the rock and the earth allowed rainwater to seep in, carrying a bit of moisture from the air, keeping him breathing, albeit feebly. His backpack lay scattered beside him, his notebook open to the last page he'd written, "The moon is bright and cold tonight." He didn't have the strength to wake up, didn't have the strength to call out to Luna, but in his days he vaguely thought of the dog, hoping that Luna was safe with the team. On the ground, Luna paid no attention to the rain or the cold seeping through her wet fur. She stood at the edge of the ravine, her claws digging into the damp red earth, leaving deep scratches that she couldn't dig through. Her barking grew fainter as the cold dried her throat, but she didn't stop. Luna knew Ree was down there, and she wouldn't leave until she found him. Her fur was soaked from the rain, her eyes red from the wind and exhaustion, but her gaze was unwavering, as if to say she would never give up. Luna stood there, alone in the deep Appalachian mountains, in the rain and the pale moonlight, waiting, against all odds, as a testament to her loyalty to Ree, a loyalty that would lead to a strange secret in the days to come. After Ryan Ree Carter fell into a ravine during a sudden rainstorm in the Appalachian Mountains, the patrol was forced to retreat, leaving Luna, the faithful German shepherd, alone in the cold rain and darkness of the deep forest. The rain did not stop immediately after the team left. It continued to fall steadily through the oak trees, soaking the dry leaves on the ground and turning the air into a chilly mist under the pale moonlight. The night temperature hovered around 4 degrees Celsius, 39 degrees Fahrenheit, and the damp chill carried the scent of red earth and wet leaves in the air, drowned out by the steady sound of the rain. Luna stood at the edge of the ravine where Ree had disappeared, her ears erect, her bright brown eyes now red from the rain and wind, but her gaze never wavering. She barked incessantly, echoing through the trees, weakened by her parched throat, but Luna did not care. In its mind, there was only one goal, to find Ree, the companion it had chosen to be faithful to since the day they first met. 2 days had passed since Ree's fall, and Luna had remained at the edge of the ravine, despite the chill of the night when the temperature dropped to 2 degrees Celsius, 36 degrees Fahrenheit, making her shiver beneath her wet fur. The Appalachian Mountains were unforgiving to any living creature, and Luna had no water or food to sustain her beyond the rain she licked from the oak leaves. Her glossy black fur, once carefully groomed to protect against the cold of the mountains and the drizzle from the trails, was now matted with red dirt and dry leaves, matted in patches, exposing the emaciated body beneath. Her ears were still erect, but one was slightly scratched from hitting a tree root in her relentless digging efforts. The bright brown eyes, once intelligent and determined, were red and dim from the rain, the cold, and exhaustion, but they still stared at the dirt covering the crevice, as if they could pierce it to see Ree beneath. Luna clawed at the ground, leaving deep scratches in the damp red earth and tangled roots, sometimes bleeding where her claws made contact with sharp rocks hidden beneath the surface. She tried to dig through more than 2 feet of dirt to reach Ree, but the cold hardened the ground, and each time Luna dug a little, the rainwater covered her efforts. Luna did not give up. She stopped, panting, her breath forming small clouds in the cold air, then clawed again, as if driven by some deep instinct, an instinct of absolute loyalty to Ree. Its legs trembled with cold and exhaustion. The lean muscles that had once propelled it along the trails around the base now shriveled from lack of water and nourishment. Luna ate nothing but the few dry leaves it accidentally swallowed when sniffing the ground. It drank nothing but the rainwater that had collected on the leaves. Its red eyes stared at the dirt, and its barks grew weaker with each passing day, drowned out by the sound of the rain and the wind whistling through the trees in the deep forest. But Luna didn't care about hunger, thirst, or the cold that was slowly robbing it of its life force. It only knew that Ree was down there, and it had to stay to save him. In the narrow crevice, Ree lay in the suffocating darkness, his body immobile from the terrible fall from the sudden rain. He woke up after a few hours of unconsciousness, his mind hazy, not knowing how long he had been there. The sharp pain from the gash in his temple spread throughout his head, and every time he tried to move, he had to grit his teeth to keep from screaming in pain. A deep gash on his left temple, where he had hit the rock when he fell, left dried blood streaking his tanned face, and his green eyes were blurred with dehydration and exhaustion. The temperature in the crevice was slightly cooler than outside, about 3 degrees Celsius, 37 degrees Fahrenheit, but the stuffy, oxygen-deprived air made it difficult for him to breathe. He survived because of a small gap between the rock and the earth, where rainwater seeped in, carrying moisture from the surface air. He licked small drops of water from the rock, taking weak sips to keep himself from becoming completely dehydrated, but he knew that if he did not get help soon, he would not last much longer. In those dreamy hours, Ree thought of Luna. He remembered mornings at the border post near Appalachia, throwing an old rubber ball for Luna to chase in the training yard, watching her run with strong strides, her muscles defined under her shiny black fur. He remembered nights in the camp, Luna curled up on an old blanket next to his bed, her ears perked up as he whispered to her about Logan. He remembered the way Luna's eyes glowed when she looked at him, as if she understood everything he didn't say. He wondered if Luna was safe, if she'd follow the patrol to find shelter, or if she was still somewhere on the ground, waiting for him. He didn't know that Luna was right above him, just a few feet away, but the dirt was thick. He whispered to himself with the last of his strength, "Luna, where are you? If you're still alive, find me." But he didn't have the strength to shout, and his voice was drowned out by the oppressive silence in the ravine. On the ground, Luna faced the cold, the rain, and the loneliness of the deep mountains. A few times, there was a distant noise, maybe a deer moving in the bushes or an owl hoot in the night, but Luna paid no attention to those dangers. She didn't think about the hunger, the thirst, or the cold that was slowly robbing her of her life. In her mind, there was only Ree, the soldier who had knelt down and stroked her head when they first met, who had shared the cold patrols in the mountains, who had become her family in this strange land. Luna lay down on the edge of the ravine when the night chill became too much, curling up to keep some of her own warmth during the hours when the rain stopped. But within minutes she was back up again, scratching and barking, as if refusing to rest. About 2 miles from the ravine, a group of locals living near a small town on the edge of Appalachia heard Luna's faint barking echoing through the cold winds after the rain had subsided on the second day. They were familiar with the mountain, often hunting or helping with spring search efforts to help those in distress. A man named Amos, about 55 years old, a former hunter in Charleston, stood on a low slope, listening to the distant barking, but he couldn't tell exactly where it was coming from in the remaining darkness. He thought it might be a stray dog, but he didn't dare venture too far into the woods, where tales of wild animals and smugglers kept the locals cautious. He returned to the group's camp and sat by the small fire, but he still felt a vague unease. He didn't know that the barking was Luna, a dog fighting cold, thirst, and death to save her master. Down in the narrow crevice, Ree began to lose consciousness. He felt his body growing lighter, as if he were floating in an unknown space. He no longer felt the pain from the gash on his temple or the stifling cold. Everything became blurry, and his mind drifted to distant memories. He remembered mornings jogging on the dirt roads of Logan, when the moonlight filtered through the oak trees, making them look like a painting. He remembered sitting by the fire with his father, listening to the crackle of the firewood and the smell of wood smoke in the air. He remembered the mornings in Appalachia, when he and Luna would patrol the base, the peace he felt watching the dog run along the leaf-covered trails. He thought that if he were to die here, at least he would have had those moments when he felt his life had meaning. But he didn't want to give up. He whispered to himself, "Luna, if you're still there, find me. I trust you." On the ground, Luna didn't know that Ree was losing hope. She didn't know that the patrol had retreated, that the rain was still falling steadily, that no one heard her barking over the howling wind and rustling leaves. But Luna didn't need to know. She didn't act on reason or logic. She acted on instinct, on the loyalty that was deep in the heart of a German shepherd. Luna stood there, at the edge of the narrow crevice, a lone figure in the deep woods and the rain, steadfast and unyielding. It did not leave, did not give up, even though its body was exhausted, even though the cold and rain were slowly sapping its strength. Luna knew that Ree was down there, and it would stay until it found him, or until it had no more strength left to go on. 2 days passed, and Luna stood there, living testament to loyalty beyond all bounds. She had no idea that the local tribe would soon hear her barking, that her efforts would lead to an emotional reunion and the revelation of a strange secret. But Luna didn't need to know. To her, only one thing mattered: Ree, her companion, her master, the one to whom she had chosen to be loyal since the day they first met. Luna stood there, deep in the Appalachian mountains, waiting, hoping, and fighting, a German shepherd with a heart that would never give up. 2 days after Ryan Ree Carter fell into a ravine during a sudden rainstorm in the Appalachian Mountains, the patrol did not immediately return to look for him. The heavy rain, combined with the rugged terrain and the loss of radio signal when Ree's equipment was shattered in the fall, made initial efforts impossible. The daytime temperature hovered around 5 degrees Celsius 41 degrees Fahrenheit, and the damp mountain chill permeated every layer of soil, dry leaves, and air, carrying the scent of red earth on the weak winds. Ree lay at the bottom of the ravine in the stifling darkness, his body immobile from the horrific fall. He had regained consciousness after several hours of coma, but now he was drifting into a dreamlike state between life and death. The pain from the laceration to his temple was now just a dull ache, as if his body had given up fighting back the pain. The sweat had stopped flowing because he was severely dehydrated, and his green eyes were half closed, blurred in the darkness. His breathing was weak in thin wisps that dissipated in the cold air, and he had no strength to move or call for help. He was kept alive by a small gap between the rock and the earth, where rainwater had seeped in, carrying moisture from the air, but he knew his time was running out. On the ground, Luna still stood at the edge of the narrow crevice, a lone figure in the cold mountains. 2 days had passed, and the 80-pound German shepherd was now emaciated and exhausted, her glossy black coat streaked with red dirt and dry leaves, matted in hard clumps. Luna's ears were still erect, but one was slightly scratched, and her bright brown eyes were now red from the rain, the cold, and exhaustion. Her legs trembled, and her claws bled from deep scratches where she had been scrabbling at the wet red earth for 2 days without rest, leaving small red streaks on the ground. Luna had no water or food but the rain on the oak leaves, and she stood there, braving the cold of the day and the chill of the night, waiting for Ree. She barked incessantly, her barks growing fainter as the days passed, drowned out by the howling wind, but Luna would not give up. She knew Ree was down there, and she would not leave until she found him. After 2 days, as the heavy rain began to ease with the stronger winds and the pale morning light of the third day, the rescue team from the border base near Appalachia decided to return to the Narrows. They had not acted sooner, because the rain and treacherous terrain had made all previous attempts needlessly risky. But when the weather cleared, Sergeant Dave Lawson, Ree's patrol leader, resolutely led the rescue team back. Lawson, a 38-year-old with short black hair, a tanned, angular face, and deep brown eyes, could not forget Luna's unwavering gaze when the dog refused to leave the crevice 2 days earlier. He knew that if Ree was alive, Luna would be the key to finding him. The 8-man rescue team, equipped with 2 Border Patrol jeeps, high-powered headlights, digging tools like shovels and hose, and a medical kit for emergency first aid, left the base early Tuesday morning, when the temperature was still 6 degrees Celsius 43 degrees Fahrenheit, and the sun was just breaking through the clouds, casting a pale yellow light through the lingering mist in the air. When the rescue team reached the crevice, they saw Luna in the distance, a small but determined figure in the narrow path. Luna stood there, almost motionless, her legs shaking with exhaustion, her fur matted with dirt and dead leaves, and a trail of dried blood running from her claws to the ground below. Lawson, the leader of the team, stopped and looked at Luna with amazement and emotion. He couldn't believe that the dog had been here for 2 days, in the cold and dampness and the pouring rain, without water or food. He walked closer, knelt down before Luna, and noticed that her red eyes were still shining steadily, as if pleading with him. Ree is here. Help me. Luna no longer had the strength to bark loudly, only making weak, hoarse sounds, then shuffling to the edge of the ravine, pawing at the ground with her bleeding claws as if to show the rescue team where to dig. Private First Class Matt Evans, a member of the patrol and now part of the rescue team, stood next to Lawson, looking at Luna with thoughtful eyes. Evans, a tall 28-year-old with dark blonde hair and a tan, had worked with Ree and Luna on patrol. He knew the bond between them, and he felt a pang of pain at the thought that Ree might not make it. But when he saw Luna, he felt a glimmer of hope. He walked over, knelt beside Luna, and stroked her matted fur. He felt her thin, trembling body under his hands, and he knew that Luna had sacrificed everything to stay here, waiting for Ree. If he's alive, it's because of you, he whispered to himself. The rescue team moved quickly into position. They brought long steel shovels, iron hose, and a handheld air blower to clear the damp red dirt that covered the entrance to the ravine. Luna, exhausted, trudged closer to the edge, clawing at the dirt with her weak claws, as if to help. Lawson ordered the team to concentrate on digging in the area Luna had pointed out, where the dirt bore deep scratches from her dog's claws. He knew Luna wouldn't be there for nothing. If Ree were alive, he would be down there. The rescue team worked in silence, the only sounds being the shovels digging into the dirt, the hose breaking through the roots, and their labored breathing in the cold air. Luna stood by, her legs shaking, but she didn't move. She looked at the rescue team with a steady gaze, as if pleading with them. Hurry. He needs us. Down in the narrow ravine, Ree didn't know the rescue team had arrived. He had lost track of time, and his body was in critical condition. The temperature in the crevice was about 3 degrees Celsius, 37 degrees Fahrenheit, lower than outside, but the stuffy, oxygen-deprived air left him with only weak gasps. He licked the small drops of water from the soil that had seeped through the crevice, drinking sips to keep himself from becoming completely dehydrated, but he had no strength to eat or move. His backpack, torn apart when he fell, lay scattered beside him, and his notebook fell out, open to the last page he had written. Tonight the moon is bright cold. He had no strength to hold a pen, but in his heart he thought of Luna, of the way her eyes shone brightly whenever she looked at him, and told himself that if Luna were alive, she would not abandon him. He did not know that Luna was right above him, leading the rescue team to his rescue. The rescue team worked tirelessly for more than an hour in the cold morning air. They dug through the damp red earth, breaking through the tangled roots, and finally found a narrow opening leading down into the ravine. Lawson bent down, shining a powerful flashlight inside, and the light from the flashlight fell on Ree's pale face. He lay there, motionless, eyes half closed, breathing so weak he could barely see, with dried blood on his temples and a body trembling in his wet uniform. Lawson felt his heart sink, but he did not give up hope. He shouted to the team, "We found him! Hurry!" The rescue team quickly widened the entrance, using shovels and their bare hands to clear the dirt, creating a path large enough to pull Ree up. Luna, exhausted, trudged closer, looking down into the opening with a bright gaze. She had no strength left to bark, but she stood there, waiting, as if she knew Ree was about to be rescued. Lisa Tran and a paramedic named Paul, a man in his mid-30s with short brown hair and strong arms, climbed down the ravine to check on Ree. They wrapped him in a thermal blanket and checked his pulse and breathing. Paul placed his hand on Ree's neck, felt a faint pulse, and confirmed that he was alive, though in critical condition. "He's alive, but he's weak," he told Lisa. "We need to get him out now." They carefully placed Ree on a stretcher, strapping him in with straps to avoid further injury. When Ree was pulled to the surface, the faint light of the sun filtering through the clouds illuminated his pale face, and the rescuers breathed a sigh of relief. He was alive, a miracle after 2 days trapped in the narrow ravine in the cold and rain of Appalachia. Luna shuffled over to the stretcher, bent down to sniff Ree's face, her red eyes shining faintly but hopefully. Luna had no strength left to do anything more, but she was still there, beside Ree, as if to make sure he was still alive. Lawson looked at Luna with admiration and emotion. He knelt down beside the dog, stroking its matted fur, feeling its trembling body beneath his hands. He knew that without Luna, they would never have found Ree in time. "You are a true warrior, Luna," he whispered to himself. Lisa wiped the mist from her face, not to clean it, but to hide the tears of emotion. She looked at Luna, saw her emaciated body, her shaking legs, and her bleeding claws, and knew that the dog had sacrificed everything to save Ree. She whispered to herself, "Thank you, Luna. You did the unthinkable." The rescue team quickly treated Ree on the spot. Paul administered fluids through and for, pumping warm saline solution to help his body fight dehydration. They examined his injuries, confirming that he had a deep laceration to his temple and signs of head trauma, but no signs of serious fractures, a blessing given the circumstances. They placed a bandage over the laceration to his temple to temporarily stop the bleeding, and wrapped a thermal blanket around his body to protect him from the cold. Ree was still unconscious, but his breathing was gradually becoming more stable, and his pulse was becoming more noticeable. The rescue team knew they needed to get him back to base immediately, where he could receive proper medical care, and then to a larger hospital. As the rescue team prepared to load Ree into the jeep and head back to base, Luna trailed behind, never leaving Ree's side. The dog was so exhausted she could barely walk, but she tried, her legs shaking, her claws leaving small trails of blood in the dirt. Lisa looked at Luna, feeling a pang of pain in her heart. She knew Luna needed medical attention, but she also knew she wouldn't leave Ree until she was sure he was safe. "Take Luna with you," Lawson ordered the team. "She's done enough. We'll take care of them both." Luna had done her duty, not through strength or skill, but through loyalty beyond measure. 2 days after Ryan Ree Carter fell into a ravine amid a sudden rainstorm in the Appalachian Mountains, a rescue team from a nearby border base returned with a glimmer of hope that he was still alive. The heavy rain had eased by Tuesday morning, giving way to a thin layer of sunlight through thick clouds, but the damp chill of a March morning still hung over the area, with temperatures hovering around 6 degrees Celsius 43 degrees Fahrenheit. The air carried the scent of red dirt and wet leaves, carried by a light wind that whistled through the green and yellow oak trees. The 8-man rescue team, equipped with a Border Patrol Jeep, digging tools like shovels and picks, and high-powered headlights, worked tirelessly for more than an hour to break up the damp red dirt that covered the entrance to the ravine where Ree was trapped. The sun hung low in the sky, casting a pale yellow light through the gaps in the clouds, glinting off the water droplets on the dry oak leaves, but not enough to dispel the chill that permeated the team's every breath. Luna, the German shepherd who had been standing guard at the edge of the ravine for 2 days, was exhausted, her thin body shivering in the damp chill. Her glossy black coat, once carefully groomed against the chill of the Appalachian mountains, was matted with red dirt and dry leaves, matted in hard, dry patches, revealing the prominent veins on her once lean body. Luna's ears were still erect, but one was slightly scratched, and her bright brown eyes, once intelligent and determined, were red from the rain, the cold, and exhaustion. Her legs trembled, and her claws bled from deep scratches where she had scratched the wet red dirt for 2 days without rest, leaving small red streaks on the ground. Luna stood there, almost motionless, but her eyes never left the rescue team, as if waiting for a miracle. She had no strength left to bark loudly, only weak, hoarse sounds, but she still trudged closer to the edge of the ravine, clawing at the ground as if to help, though each movement was an effort beyond her physical limits. Sergeant Dave Lawson, the rescue team leader, stood near Luna, watching the team work with a mixture of tension and hope. Lawson, a 38-year-old man with short black hair, a sharp face tanned by long hours in the sun, and dark brown eyes, had seen much loss in his years on the frontier. He was not an emotional man, but the sight of Luna standing guard for 2 days without food or water, in the cold and pouring rain, had filled him with a deep respect. He looked down at the dog, saw its shivering body beneath its dirt-caked fur, and thought to himself, "If he's alive, you'll be a hero, Luna." But he didn't dare to hope for too much. 2 days in the cold and waterless crevice was a trial few could endure, even for a soldier as tough as Ree. In the crevice, Ree lay in the stifling darkness, his body almost motionless, his breathing so weak it was almost inaudible. He had lost track of time, and the 37 degrees Fahrenheit 3 degrees Celsius chill in the crevice, though cooler than outside, was still draining him. The pain from the laceration on his temple and the head injury was now just a blur, as if his body had gone numb to the pain. Sweat no longer flowed because he was severely dehydrated, and his green eyes were half closed, blurred in the darkness. He survived by a small gap between the rock and the earth, where rainwater seeped in, carrying a little moisture from the surface air. He licked the drops from the rock, drinking weakly to keep his body from becoming completely dehydrated, but he had no strength left to eat or move. In his daze, he thought of Luna, remembered the dog's bright eyes whenever she looked at him, and whispered to himself with the last of his strength, "Luna, if you're still there, find me." But he had no strength left to hope for more. On the ground, the rescue team finally broke through the damp red dirt, covering the entrance to the ravine after more than an hour of nonstop work. Sweat streamed down their faces, seeping through their dark blue border uniforms, and red dirt covered their arms and shoulders, but no one complained. They widened the narrow opening into an entrance large enough for one person to climb down, and Lawson bent down, shining a powerful flashlight inside. The light from the flashlight illuminated Ree's pale face, highlighting the dried blood on his temples and his dry, cracked lips. He lay there, motionless, eyes half closed, his breathing barely visible, his left arm hanging limply in the damp dirt and his wet uniform clinging to his body. Lawson felt his heart sink. He wasn't sure if Ree was still alive, but he wouldn't give up. "We found him." "Hurry," he shouted to the team, quickly getting into position, preparing to lift Ree to the surface. Private First Class Matt Evans and Medic Paul, a man in his mid-30s with short brown hair and strong arms, volunteered to climb down the ravine to check on Ree. Evans climbed down first, his hands shaking from the cold as he clung to the roots and the slippery red soil in the ravine. He knelt down next to Ree, placing his hand on his neck to check for a pulse. His pulse was weak, but still beating, a fragile sign of life. He felt a surge of hope, but he also knew that Ree was in dire straits. He looked at his pale face, saw his dry lips and half-closed eyes, and felt a pang of pain. He had patrolled with Ree, knew him to be a patient soldier who kept his cool in difficult situations, and he whispered to himself, "You have to live, Ree. Luna didn't abandon you, and neither will we." Paul, who climbed down after Evans, carried a thermal blanket and a small medical kit. He checked Ree's breathing, placed his hand on his chest to feel for it, and confirmed that he was alive, though weak. He's severely dehydrated and he has head trauma, he told Evans. We need to get him out now. Evans and Paul carefully placed Ree on a stretcher, strapping him in with straps to avoid further injury. They wrapped him in thermal blankets, trying to protect his body from the cold while the rescue team above pulled the stretcher up. When Ree was pulled to the surface, the pale sunlight shone on his pale face, highlighting the dried blood and cracked skin from dehydration. The rescue team breathed a sigh of relief to see him alive, a miracle after 2 days trapped in the cold and rain of Appalachia. Luna, exhausted, trudged over to the stretcher, bent down to sniff Ree's face. The dog's red eyes lit up faintly, but hopefully, as if it knew that Ree had been saved. Luna had no strength left to bark, but she put her head on Ree's hand, feeling the faint warmth of his body, and stood still beside him, as if to make sure he was still alive. Lawson watched the scene, feeling a surge of emotion. He knelt down beside Luna, stroking the dog's muddy fur, and feeling its trembling body under his hand. He knew that without Luna, they would never have found Ree in time. He thought to himself, "You did the unthinkable, Luna." Evans, standing next to Lawson, wiped the water from his face, not to clean it, but to hide the tears of emotion. He looked at Luna, saw her thin body, her trembling legs, and her bleeding claws, and he knew that the dog had sacrificed everything to save Ree. "Thank you, Luna," he whispered to himself. "You are a true hero." The rescue team quickly treated Ree on the spot. Paul gave him fluids through and for, pumping him with warm saline to help his body fight dehydration. They examined his wounds, confirming that he had a deep laceration to his temple and signs of head trauma, but no major fractures, a blessing in disguise. They placed a gauze pad over the laceration to temporarily stop the bleeding, and wrapped an additional thermal blanket around his body to protect him from the harsh cold. Ree was still unconscious, but his breathing was gradually steadier, and his pulse was more noticeable thanks to the saline. The rescue team knew they needed to get him back to base immediately, where he could receive proper medical care, and then to a larger hospital. As the rescue team prepared to load Ree into the jeep to head back to base, Luna struggled to stand up and follow. The dog shuffled along, legs shaking, claws leaving small trails of blood in the dirt. It didn't have the strength to go fast, but it tried, as if it didn't want to leave Ree's side for even a second. Lisa Tran, standing nearby, pulled an old jacket from her pack, a dark blue border jacket, frayed at the cuffs, and wrapped it around Luna to protect her from the cold. She stroked the dog's head, feeling the dirt-matted fur beneath her hands, and saw its red eyes looking at her with determination. She knew Luna needed medical attention, but she also knew that she wouldn't leave Ree until she was sure he was safe. Lawson ordered the team, "Put Luna in the jeep next to Ree. She's done enough. We'll take care of them both." Paul and Private First Class Tom Reed, a 30-year-old man with short red hair and a calm demeanor, carefully lifted Luna, placing the dog in the jeep next to Ree's stretcher. Luna didn't protest. She was too weak to do anything but lie down. They wrapped Lisa's coat tighter around Luna and placed a small blanket over her to protect her from the cold wind from the car door. Luna lay close to Ree, her head resting on the edge of the stretcher, her red eyes watching him with determination. She didn't have the strength to bark or move, but she was there, next to Ree, as if to make sure he was safe. In Ree's heart, though he was still unconscious, a vague feeling crept into his mind. He didn't know that the rescue team had found him, didn't know that Luna had stood guard for 2 days to lead them here. But in his faint dream, he saw Luna, her eyes shining, standing in the deep mountains under the moonlight, waiting for him. He felt a strange comfort, as if he knew that the dog would never abandon him. That miraculous moment when Ree was pulled from the narrow crevice, alive after 2 days trapped in the cold and rain, was not only a miracle of survival, but also a testament to the unwavering loyalty of Luna, the German shepherd who refused to abandon her companion. As the rescue team from the border base near Appalachia pulled Ryan Ree Carter from a narrow ravine deep in the mountains, the damp chill of the third morning was still all around. The temperature hovered around 6 degrees Celsius, 43 degrees Fahrenheit, and a light wind blew through the area, carrying moisture from the wet red soil that clung to the green and yellow oak trees. Ree lay unconscious on a stretcher, his face pale with dried blood on his temples, his lips cracked from dehydration, and his weak breaths coming in thin wisps that dissipated in the chill air. The rescue team quickly wrapped him in a silver thermal blanket, administered fluids through and for to combat severe dehydration, and placed a bandage over the gash on his temple to temporarily stop the bleeding. But as they worked, Luna, the German shepherd who had stood guard at the edge of the ravine for 2 days, creeped closer, never leaving Ree's side. Luna was a shadow of her former self. Her glossy black fur, once carefully groomed against the cold of the Appalachian Mountains, was matted with red dirt and dry leaves, matted in hard, crusty patches, revealing a thin, shivering body beneath. Luna's ears were still erect, but one was slightly scratched, and her bright brown eyes, once intelligent and determined, were red from rain, cold, and exhaustion. Her legs trembled, and her claws bled from deep scratches where she had scratched the wet red dirt for 2 days straight, leaving small red streaks on the ground. Luna had no strength to walk fast, but she trudged closer to Ree's stretcher, bending down to sniff his face, as if to make sure he was still alive. As the rescue team laid Ree down to bandage him and prepare him for the jeep, Luna lay close to the stretcher, using her body to shield Ree from the cold winds that blew through the area. The rescue team looked at Luna with awe and emotion. Sergeant Dave Lawson, the team leader, stood nearby, watching the dog with awe in his dark brown eyes. Lawson, a 38-year-old man with short black hair and a sharp face tanned by long hours in the outdoors, had seen a lot in his career on the border, from dangerous patrols to inevitable loss. He was not an emotional man, but the sight of Luna lying next to Ree, using her thin body to shield him, made him feel a pang of pain. He looked at the dog's trembling body, saw the dirt on her fur and the dried blood on her claws, and knew that Luna had sacrificed everything to save Ree. No food, no water, no rest for 2 days in the cold and pouring rain. He knelt next to Luna, stroked her dirt-coated fur, felt her thin, shaking body under his hands. "You did what none of us could," he thought. "You're a real warrior." Private First Class Matt Evans, a member of the rescue team, stood next to Lawson, looking at Luna with thoughtful eyes. Evans, a tall 28-year-old with dark blonde hair and a tan, had patrolled with Ree and Luna on many missions in Appalachia. He knew the bond between them, and he felt a deep emotion when he saw Luna lying close to Ree, shielding him from the cold wind with her body. He knelt down next to Luna, took an old jacket from his pack, a dark blue border jacket, frayed at the cuffs and soaked with sweat from days of patrol, and wrapped it around her to protect her from the cold and the damp red soil. He stroked Luna's head, feeling the dirt-caked fur beneath his hand, and saw her red eyes looking at him with determination. "You did everything to save him, Luna. Now it's our turn to take care of you," he whispered to himself. While the rescue team bandaged Ree, Luna did not move from her position. The dog lay close to the stretcher, her body pressed tightly against the edge of the stretcher, like a living wall separating Ree from the cold wind blowing through the area. Luna's legs trembled. The strong muscles that had once made her run like the wind on the trails around the base now shrunk from the cold and lack of water. She no longer had the strength to stand, but she still tried, using her last bit of strength to protect Ree. The rescue team saw this action, and a feeling of admiration welled up in their hearts. Paul, the team's medical officer, a man of about 33 with short brown hair and strong hands, was bandaging the cut on Ree's temple and looked up at Luna. He shook his head in amazement, thinking to himself, "I've never seen a dog like this." Not only did she save him, but she protected him to the very end. Ree, still unconscious, did not know that Luna was beside him, protecting him from the cold and wind of the deep mountains. He did not feel the faint warmth of Luna's thin body, did not hear the dog's panting as it struggled to keep its position. But in his faint dream, he saw Luna, her eyes shining, standing in the deep mountains under the moonlight, waiting for him. He felt a strange comfort, as if he knew that the dog would never abandon him. In his heart, though he could not consciously realize it, a warm feeling crept into his mind, as if he knew that he was not alone. The rescue team finished bandaging Ree, placing a bandage over the gash on his temple to stop the bleeding, and wrapping another layer of thermal blanket around his body to protect him from the harsh cold. They checked his breathing and pulse, finding them to be slightly more stable, thanks to the warm saline solution being administered intravenously. But they knew that Ree needed to be taken back to base immediately, where he could receive proper medical care, and then to a larger hospital. They loaded Ree into a Border Patrol Jeep, a vehicle designed for the rugged terrain of the Appalachian Mountains, with dark green paint and large tires designed to traverse trails covered in red dirt and loose rocks. The vehicle was covered with a blue tarp to protect it from the wind and cold, and Ree was placed on a soft mattress to minimize vibrations during the ride. As the rescue team prepared to leave, Luna struggled to get up and follow Ree. The dog shuffled along, legs shaking, claws leaving small trails of blood in the dirt. He had no strength to walk fast, but he tried, as if he didn't want to leave Ree's side for even a second. Corporal Lisa Tran, who stood next to Luna, looked at the dog with tears in her eyes. She knew Luna needed immediate medical attention, but she also knew that she wouldn't leave Ree until she was sure he was safe. She knelt down next to Luna, stroked her head, and said to Lawson, "We need to take Luna with us. She can't stay here." Lawson nodded, ordering the team, "Put Luna in the Jeep, next to Ree. She's done enough. We'll take care of them both." Paul and Private First Class Tom Reed, a 30-year-old man with short red hair and a calm demeanor, carefully lifted Luna and placed her in the Jeep, next to Ree's stretcher. Luna didn't protest. She was too weak to do anything but lie down. They wrapped Evans's jacket tighter around her and placed a small blanket over her to protect her from the cold wind coming through the door. Luna lay close to Ree, her head resting on the edge of the stretcher, her red eyes looking at him with determination. It had no strength left to bark or move, but it stayed there, next to Ree, as if to make sure he was safe. The rescue team set off, the Jeep moving over rough trails, heading for the base camp 6 miles away, where a medical team was waiting to take Ree and Luna. The cold wind still blew, carrying moisture that clung to the canvas of the vehicle, but inside, Luna lay close to Ree, her thin body radiating a faint warmth. Lawson sat in the front, looking back at Luna and Ree, feeling a surge of emotion. He knew that Luna's protective actions were more than instinct. They were loyalty beyond measure, a deep friendship between a dog and its owner. "If he's alive, it's because of you, Luna," he thought. Lisa sat next to Luna, stroking her head, feeling her weak breathing under her hand. She looked at Ree, seeing his pale face regain some color from the saline solution, and she hoped he would wake up. She looked at Luna, seeing her red eyes still on Ree, and she knew that the dog had done all he could. "Thank you, Luna," she whispered to herself. "You saved him, and we're going to save you." As the Jeep moved through the deep Appalachian mountains, Luna lay there, next to Ree, a living testament to loyalty and friendship that had endured the cold, the rain, and the danger. Evans, who sat in the back of the Jeep, felt a surge of gratitude as he looked at Luna. He thought of patrols in Appalachia, when Luna would always be ahead of the team, sniffing the ground, her ears pricked for danger. He remembered the times Ree threw the rubber ball to Luna, and the way the dog ran with a joy rarely seen in a working dog. He knew that Luna had not only saved Ree, she had saved the team's morale, bringing hope to a seemingly hopeless situation. He whispered to himself, "You're more than a dog, Luna. You're our family." As the Jeep continued to roll through the red dirt trails, the weak morning sunlight filtered through the oak trees, brightening the lingering fog in the air. Luna lay there, her thin body almost motionless, but her eyes never left Ree, as if to say that her mission wasn't over until Ree was safe. Little did the rescuers know that this journey was not just the end of a search. It was the beginning of a greater discovery, a secret hidden in the darkness that Luna would lead them to in the days to come. But right now, in that moment, all they saw was the unwavering loyalty of Luna, a German shepherd who used her own life force to protect the companion she loved. After being pulled from a narrow canyon deep in the Appalachian Mountains by rescuers, Ryan, Reed Carter, and Luna were loaded into a Border Patrol Jeep and driven 6 miles to a makeshift base camp. The chill of the March morning still hung over the area, with temperatures hovering around 6 degrees Celsius, 43 degrees Fahrenheit, and a light breeze blew, carrying moisture from the red dirt that clung to the dark green canvas of the vehicle. Ree lay unconscious on a stretcher, his face pale with streaks of dried blood on his temples, his lips dry and cracked, and a bandage taped to his lacerations to stop the bleeding. And 4 was hooked up to his arm, dripping warm saline solution to counteract the severe dehydration. Luna lay next to the stretcher, her thin body trembling, her shiny black fur streaked with silver and dust, her red eyes fixed on Ree with determination. The rescue team, led by Sergeant Dave Lawson, sat around them, eyes a mixture of worry and hope as the vehicle rolled over the rough trails toward the base. The journey back to the base took about 20 minutes, and when the Jeep pulled into the base yard, a large area surrounded by wire mesh fencing and lush oak forests, a medical team was already waiting. Ree was quickly ushered into the base's medical shed, a small corrugated iron-roofed room with wooden walls, containing a few medical beds, a medicine cabinet, and a small heater to alleviate the chill outside. Nurses in dark blue uniforms began to assess his condition, diagnosing him with severe dehydration, a head injury from a laceration to his temple, and signs of severe exhaustion. His skin was pale, his breathing was shallow, and his body was shaking despite being wrapped in thermal blankets. They gave him more saline intravenously, put him under a heat lamp to warm him up, and took x-rays with a handheld machine to determine the extent of his injuries. The base doctors decided he needed to be transported to a larger hospital for treatment, and a U-860 Black Hawk helicopter was called to take him to a hospital in Charleston, about 60 miles away. Luna, meanwhile, was taken to a separate area on the base reserved for working animals. A veterinarian named Sarah, a woman in her mid-30s with tied-back blonde hair and soft blue eyes, examined the dog. Luna weighed about 70 pounds, nearly 10 pounds less than before the accident, having not eaten or drank anything for 2 days in the cold and rain. Her shiny black fur with a hint of silver was caked with red dirt and dried leaves. Her eyes were red, and her claws were bleeding from deep scratches. Sarah checked Luna's heart and breathing, finding them weak but steady, and confirmed that the dog was severely weakened by hunger, thirst, and exhaustion. She gave Luna fluids through and for, pumped her with a nutrient solution to replenish her energy, and placed her under a heat lamp to keep her warm in the cool shed. She bandaged the scratches on Luna's claws and gently trimmed away the matted fur to clean her body. But Sarah noticed Luna's eyes constantly darting toward the medical shed, as if searching for Ree. The flight from Appalachia to Charleston took about 25 minutes. Ree was placed on a medical stretcher in the helicopter's cockpit, wrapped in a thermal blanket, with a small oxygen tube attached to his nose to aid his breathing. Luna was placed next to him in a metal transport cage, her emaciated body lying on a soft mattress, her red eyes peering through the metal bars to watch Ree. The helicopter lifted off into the pale morning light, the roar of the engines drowning out all other sounds, and as they flew over oak forests and low mountains, the chill of Appalachia gave way to the warmer air of the plains near Charleston. When the helicopter landed at the hospital in Charleston in mid-morning, the temperature was about 8 degrees Celsius, 46 degrees Fahrenheit, a welcome change from the cold, deep mountains Ree and Luna had just left. At the hospital in Charleston, Ree was admitted to the intensive care unit. He was placed on a medical bed with a metal railing, in a small room with white walls, frosted glass windows overlooking a small garden, and modern medical equipment such as a heart monitor and a backup ventilator. Doctors diagnosed him with severe dehydration, head trauma from a laceration to his temple, and mild signs of pneumonia from inhaling cold, moist air from the crevice. They stitched up the laceration to his temple with 10 medical stitches and gave him antibiotics and nutrients intravenously to fight infection and restore his body. An oxygen tube was placed in his nose, and an 4 dripped from a metal rack next to the bed, providing pain medication and nutrients. For the first 2 days, Ree remained in a coma, his body so weak that doctors fear the damage from dehydration and the head injury might have affected his brain, but they hoped he would wake up as his body recovered. Luna was cared for in an animal ward in the hospital, about 20 meters from Ree's room. Sarah, a veterinarian from the base, accompanied the flight to continue monitoring the dog's condition. Luna was placed on a soft, padded examination table in a small room with white walls and a clean tile floor. Sarah gave Luna 4 fluids and fed her small meals of soft, protein-rich foods like ground chicken mixed with rice to help her regain her strength. She cleaned Luna's matted fur with warm water and mild soap, bandaged the scratches on her claws, and placed her under a heat lamp to keep her warm in the cool Charleston air. Luna gradually recovered, her body stopped shaking, and her red eyes began to shine brighter, but her gaze kept looking towards the door, as if waiting for Ree. On the second day of the hospital, Ree began to show signs of waking up. He opened his eyes slowly, the white light from the ceiling shining into his eyes, causing him to blink repeatedly to adjust. He felt a dull pain in his head and chest, but the pain was not as intense as before. He looked around, seeing the white walls, the medical bed, and the 4 hanging beside it. He couldn't remember clearly what had happened, only vague images of the rain, the stifling cold in the crevice, and Luna's eyes in his mind. He tried to sit up, but his body was too weak, and a young nurse named Emily, a girl around 23 years old with black hair tied up and gentle brown eyes, quickly came over, placing her hands on his shoulders to keep him down. She told him in a soft voice that he had been rescued, that he was in the hospital in Charleston, and that he needed to rest. Ree said nothing, but in his mind, a single question was on his mind. Where is Luna? When Ree woke up, the rescue team notified Sarah, and she decided to take Luna to his room. Luna, though still weak, had regained some of her strength under Sarah's care. Her fur had been cleaned, the scratches on her claws had been bandaged, and her thin body was no longer shaking. Sarah led Luna on a leash through the long hallways of the hospital, with its white tile floors and the smell of antiseptic in the air, to Ree's room. When the door opened, Luna saw Ree lying on the bed, and her brown eyes were shining weakly but hopefully. The dog shuffled over to the bed, pulling on a leash in Sarah's hand, and laid her head on Ree's hand. Ree looked down, saw Luna, and felt a surge of emotion. He reached out to stroke Luna's head, feeling the soft fur beneath his hand, and whispered to himself, "You saved me, Luna. Thank you." From then on, Luna stayed by Ree's side throughout his hospital stay. The nurses set up a small mat in the corner of the room for Luna, and the dog lay there, never leaving Ree's side. Sarah came to check on Luna every day, feeding her small meals and changing the bandages on her claws. Luna gradually regained her strength, her fur began to shine again, and her skinny body began to fill out. But her eyes never left Ree. Whenever a stranger entered the room, Luna stood up, her ears perked up, as if to protect him. Ree, meanwhile, recovered slowly. He underwent tests to monitor his head injury, and although the laceration on his temple had healed, he still felt a dull ache when he moved. He was still weak, but every day he felt his body getting better, and he knew that he was alive thanks to Luna. During his days in the hospital, Ree thought about what had happened. He remembered the sudden rain, the stifling cold in the crevice, and the despair of knowing he would never escape. He remembered the faint dreams of Luna, the dog's eyes shining in the deep mountains under the moonlight. He didn't know exactly what Luna had done to save him, but he felt the dog's loyalty in every moment. He looked at Luna, saw her lying on the rug in the corner of the room, and felt a deep sense of gratitude. "I owe you my life, Luna," he whispered to himself. "I will never forget that." The story of Ree and Luna spread through the hospital in Charleston, and then to their border unit near Appalachia. Nurses said Luna never left Ree's side, that the dog stood up whenever a stranger entered the room, as if to protect him. The doctors said Ree's survival was a miracle, that he had overcome the limits of the human body thanks to Luna's will and loyalty. Lawson, Evans, and other members of the rescue team visited Ree when they were transferred to Charleston to report, bringing congratulations and admiration. They told him about Luna's loyalty, how she had stood guard at the edge of the ravine for 2 days, leading them to him to save him. Ree listened, his eyes filling with tears, and he stroked Luna's head, feeling the warmth of her body under his hand. After 3 weeks in the hospital, Ree was released. He still needed to use crutches for a few days to help him move because his body was still weak from the long period of inactivity, but he was well enough to leave Charleston. Luna, now stronger, walked beside him, her black fur slicked with silver, her ears erect, and her eyes as bright as ever. He left the hospital with a deep sense of gratitude, not only for being alive, but also for having Luna by his side, his companion, who had not abandoned him in his most dangerous hour. He knew that his journey to recovery was not just physical, but also spiritual, and Luna had helped him find meaning in life again. After 3 weeks in a Charleston hospital, Ryan Ree Carter was discharged on a late March morning in 2025. The air in Charleston was cool, around 9 degrees Celsius 48 degrees Fahrenheit, and a light breeze carried the scent of dry earth from nearby fields across the hospital parking lot. Ree walked out of the building, using a crutch on his right arm for the first few days to help him move, his body still weak from his long hospital stay. He wore a new dark blue border jacket given to him by Matt Evans, a thick gray sweater and dark blue jeans. His face was still pale, with a faint scar on his temple from a healed laceration, but his green eyes were brighter, shining with a determination and gratitude he had never had before. Beside him, Luna walked slowly, her shiny black fur tinged with silver gray, restored by her days in the hospital. The 80-pound German Shepherd is now a healthy, erect-eared dog with bright brown eyes that sparkle with intelligence and loyalty. Luna stays by Ree's side, never leaving his side, as if knowing that her mission to protect him is not over. Ree has decided not to return to the Appalachian Mountains or to continue his career in the Border Patrol. After the tragedy of the sudden rainstorm and the stifling cold of the canyon, he realized that his life needed a new direction, one that was not only for himself, but also for Luna, the companion who saved his life. He applied for early retirement from the Border Patrol, citing his health as unfit for duty, and was granted it after doctors determined that the head injury and severe dehydration had left him with some residual effects that would prevent him from patrolling or performing more physically demanding duties. He has no regrets. The Border Patrol had given him purpose over the years, but Luna had given him a reason to live. He packed his belongings from the base near Appalachia. His comrades had sent him to Charleston after the incident, including his father's old backpack, his small folding knife, and the small notebook he'd used to jot down his errant thoughts, and headed back to Logan, West Virginia, where his family's cabin was still waiting for him. The journey from Charleston to Logan took about an hour, all by car, because Ree didn't want Luna to endure another flight in a transport cage. He rented a silver Toyota Camry in Charleston, put Luna in the passenger seat, and drove home through winding roads between oak forests and low hills that had lost most of their leaves in late winter. Luna sat still, her head resting on the seat, her eyes half closed but alert to any sounds outside. Ree stopped once along the way at a small rest stop, bought a bottle of water and a sandwich for himself, and took some dry food from his pack for Luna. At each stop, Luna got out of the car and walked beside him, her ears pricked as if to make sure he was safe. When they reached Logan in the middle of the afternoon, the cool country air greeted them, with a temperature of about 8 degrees Celsius 46 degrees Fahrenheit and pale sunlight filtering through the clouds, illuminating the familiar dirt roads. Ree drove through Logan's winding roads, past leafless oak forests and small wooden houses dotted along the road. He stopped in front of his family's old wooden house, a one-story house with a red-tiled roof, weathered wooden walls, and an old fireplace in the living room that he had not repaired since his parents died. The house was as he remembered it, with a peeling gray front door, a small front porch where his mother had placed pots of spring flowers, and a small backyard covered with dead oak leaves from nearby trees. He stepped out of the car, leaning on his crutches, feeling the late winter chill seep through his coat, and looked at the house with a sense of both familiarity and alienation. Luna jumped down after him, standing close by, sniffing the air with her ears pricked up, as if checking everything around her for Ree's safety. Ree opened the door to the house, stepped inside, and smelled the old wood in the air, mixed with the dampness from the months of being unoccupied. The living room was the same as before, with a worn brown cloth armchair, a wooden table his father had built himself, and an old, dusty fireplace. He put his father's backpack on the table, took out a family photo of the small stream near the house, a souvenir he always carried with him, and placed it on the wooden shelf next to the fireplace. He sat down on the armchair, feeling his body tired but relieved, and watched as Luna lay down next to him on the wooden floor, her head resting on her front paws, her bright eyes looking at him as if to say she would always be there. He stroked Luna's head, feeling the soft fur under his hand, and thought to himself, "I'm home, Luna. Thank you for bringing me home." Ree decided to use his savings from his time in the Border Patrol to renovate the cabin in Logan, rather than sell it. He wanted to make it a place where he and Luna could live peacefully, not just as a memory of the past, but as a new beginning. He called an old friend from Logan, Jake, a 34-year-old carpenter who had worked with his father, to help him with the repairs. Jake, with dark brown hair and rough hands like Ree's father, came over one afternoon, bringing tools anew to replace rotten floorboards and repair the roof. They worked together for several weeks, painting the walls white, replacing leaky tiles, and building a low wooden fence around a backyard to give Luna room to run around. Ree and Luna moved into the house completely in early April, when the oak forest around Logan were covered in a thin layer of spring mist, and the afternoon sun filtered through the bare trees, brightening their small yard. Every afternoon, Ree and Luna walked the dirt roads around Logan. Ree gave up his crutches after a few days as his body recovered from tests at a small clinic in town, though he still felt tired after long walks. He walked slowly, taking in the fresh spring air, the scent of dry earth and oak leaves filling his nostrils. Luna walked beside him, ears perked, eyes bright, occasionally running a few steps ahead to sniff the grass along the road or chase a small bird that flew by. Ree looked at Luna, feeling a peace he had never felt before. He thought about his days in Appalachia, about the cold patrols in the deep mountains, about the sudden rain that almost took his life, and how Luna had stood guard at the edge of a ravine for 2 days to save him. He knew he would never forget Luna's loyalty, and he decided to spend the rest of his life caring for the dog, a friend who had not abandoned him in his hour of need. But Ree and Luna's story doesn't end there. A week after Ree was discharged from the hospital, a Border Patrol team from a base near Appalachia returned to the Narrows to investigate further, based on reports from a group of locals who had heard Luna barking. Led by Sergeant Lawson, they discovered a secret under the Moonlight, a hidden cave about 200 meters into the Narrows, covered in dense vegetation and red dirt. Inside the cave, they found abandoned crates of drugs, as well as evidence of a tunnel system that led across the Kentucky border, a smuggling route that Border Patrol agents had long been pursuing. Luna had apparently heard a noise from the cave, a mechanical or human howl on that full moon night, and it was that noise that kept her from leaving, not only to save Ree, but also to lead them to this discovery. The story of Ree, Luna, and the cave's secret spread through the local community in Logan and Ree's old frontier unit near Appalachia. Neighbors in Logan who had known Ree since he was a child came to visit him, bringing gifts like homemade pies and local coffee. They sat in his yard, listening to him tell the story of Luna, of the dog's loyalty that saved his life and revealed the secret in the dark. They watched Luna, now healthy and happy, run around a yard, and felt a deep sense of. In Appalachia, Lawson, Evans, and other members of the rescue team told the story to new recruits, turning Ree and Luna into symbols of loyalty and acumen within the unit. They honored Luna not only for saving Ree, but also for leading them to the cave, a discovery that would break up a criminal ring and bring justice. Luna, now 4 years old, lives happily with Ree in their log cabin in Logan. The dog no longer has to face the harsh cold of the deep mountains or the dangers of rain and rugged terrain. Instead, she lives a peaceful life, running around in the yard, lying on the porch while Ree reads on an old wooden chair, and walking with him on the red dirt roads. Ree cares for Luna with all his love and gratitude, feeding her nutritious meals like ground chicken mixed with rice, taking her to the vet in Logan regularly, and petting her head every night before bed. He looks at Luna, sees the light in her eyes, and feels that he has found the true meaning of life not in the frontier missions or the months of running away from Logan, but in the deep friendship with Luna. For Ree, the tragedy in the Appalachian Mountains is not just a painful memory, but also a profound lesson. He learned that loyalty can transcend all boundaries, that the friendship between humans and animals is a strong and precious bond. He learned that sensitivity and perseverance can lead to unexpected discoveries, like how Luna heard Howl in the dark and led the rescue team to the smuggling cave. And he learned that four-legged friends like Luna deserve to be loved and cared for, not just because of what they do for us, but because they are a part of our lives. Every time Ree looks at Luna, he whispers to himself, "Thank you, Luna. I will never forget what you did for me." Ree and Luna's story ends in peace and happiness, but the lesson from it remains forever. It is a lesson in Luna's absolute loyalty, when the dog does not abandon Ree even when facing cold, thirst, and danger. It's a lesson in enduring friendship, as Ree and Luna's bond overcomes all odds to become a living testament to the bond between humans and animals. It's a lesson in the resilience that leads to discovery, as Luna not only saves Ree's life but also reveals the secret of the smuggling cave. And it's a lesson in appreciating four-legged friends, as Luna uses her own life force to protect Ree and bring hope to the rescue team. Ree and Luna live together in a log cabin in Logan, a testament to friendship that transcends all boundaries, a story that four-legged loyalty will forever tell to honor loyal dogs like Luna.